Tuesday morning, everybody, July the 8th, 2025, 710 KNUS. Hot day headed our way. Before we do the news, I'll go back to David, the caller. It was a good caller. Conversation was good. And so I'll bypass the news until the end of our call, David. That's okay with you?
Sure, whatever you want.
Well, I want to do that, so that way I don't want you hanging on the line. Yeah.
Sure.
Our discussion was...
Look, let's get one thing straight. And I'm not a Zionist. I'm an Orthodox Jew, but I'm not a Zionist. We have tried to be at peace. They have attacked us, as you know, terrorism for years, blown up buses, restaurants, raids into Israel. We have never promoted that kind of behavior towards them. Never. And you know it, and I know it. And for someone to come along and say that we don't want peace, and we're the ones that are as at fault as much as Hamas, when the Palestinians actually, as a vast majority, voted Hamas into the government, and you know that as well. They were in favor. After October 7th, you saw the same videos that I saw of the streets lined with Palestinians cheering when they took that unfortunate young lady, beheaded her, and dragged her through the streets. The streets were lined with people cheering and clapping, and you know that. For someone to say that we are the ones that promote war, it's so absurd and so unintelligent, and you were so nice to her. I'm very, very upset.
Well, you could be upset. That's okay. That's what this notion of the First Amendment. I believe that the Palestinians have, and that's why I ask you, do you think they have a legitimate complaint about what happened?
What kind of complaint?
Well, what's happened to them since the beginning of the first century, the last century, when the deals were being struck by British colonialists who really had no right to buy or sell the land, but they did. And it goes back to Balfour, and it goes back. These people have long memories. On both sides, they have long memories. And I think after the Shoah, and again, the creation of the state, and the Palestinians saw themselves as pushed aside, much like if you read some of the aspects of Native Americans, they will tell you those same stories. If you read and take a look at some of the Native American positions, they're pro-Palestinian, and people would say, why? Well, they say they had suffered the same outcomes or the same destinies that the Palestinians did. And I actually feel sorry for Palestinians. They're locked into terrible governments on both the west side, on the West Bank. They have the PLO, and in Gaza they have Hamas. And it's hard to defend. Your points are really well taken, but do they have legitimate complaints about what's happened to them at the hands of the British?
I'm going to address that.
Sure.
That the PLO and Hamas have overtaken Gaza and what you call Palestine, that's their problem. That's not our problem. And you have we'll call it a nation or group of people that don't rise up against the PLO and the Hamas, so they are inviting terrorism to their midst. That's not our problem. On the other side of it, the Israelis have allowed people from that side to come in and seek gainful employment, to make money. They have tried to pump money into them. The PLO and Hamas steal the money. They have a complaint against who? Not against us. But yet this lady comes into your radio program talking about how we burn people in their tents. What would happen if we would have been attacked? October 7th, 1,400 innocent people were, as you know, slaughtered. Now, take the per capita and put into Americans and say, what would have happened if that per capita of American citizens would have been slaughtered by an outside force? What do you think we would have done? We would have said, oh, listen, We got to come to the table and talk peace. We would have bombed the living daylights out of that nation that did to us, as he did by 9/11. And the Israelis are defending themselves. The Hamas still want to eradicate us. We're given the opportunity to try to eradicate them because they want to kill us. And then this lady comes in who's unintelligent and says, "Oh, we burn people in their tents."
Well,
I'm sorry.
Again,
this is really
she got
absurd.
You can believe that as well, but she got called on all that stuff.
And I believe that you, as the host, should not be fair to someone who comes across those absurdities.
Wait a minute.
More than her.
No, hold on. Just hold on a second.
Okay, I'm willing to listen to you.
Well, first of all, that's when she came in. I invite Palestinians in. It's the fourth time. Do you think? And again, this has become personal here. I can sense it. She's banked everywhere else in the city. She doesn't get a voice. Now, you may think that that's okay. I don't think that you do think that's okay, but you may think it's okay. And when she brought up the Seinfeld thing, that was taken back on her. When she brought up the other things, that was taken back on her too. She had one lengthy conversation with a caller that I really laid out of. And the caller and she went at it. And that was, to me, was more fair game. But to think...
Look, I apologize. I missed the beginning of the conversation.
That's okay.
I apologize.
Listen, David.
Sorry about that.
No.
I only heard the tail end of it.
No,
but you look like you're pretty soft with her, and that really got me upset because this lady... she's inciting.
But again, when I say this all the time about what's happened to talk radio, and she was given the opportunity to speak her mind. And
yeah, you're right. I agree with you.
And
she should be allowed to speak her mind.
Yeah, she did.
But when she speaks her mind and she says absurdities,
well, she was called on them.
You, as a host, should
wait.
say, "Listen."
She was called on them.
Okay.
She was called on them. But again, do you believe that the Palestinians have any legitimate complaints about what's happened to them?
Against who? PLO and Hamas?
You just changed the topic. What I'm saying to you is, do you think from Balfour that the Palestinians have any legitimate complaints about what has happened to them?
They got land and we got land. The Balfour Declaration.
The Balfour wasn't that.
I'm not saying it was right what they did, the Lord Balfour, but that's how it was set up, and no one seemed to complain about it.
Oh, sure they did.
We were willing to live in peace with them.
No, because
we were willing to live in peace with them.
Hang on, David. The Ottoman Turk Empire falls apart.
Okay.
And the Balfour Declaration and the purchase that takes place, and Balfour, they need money to fight, and they go to the Rothschilds, and Rothschilds are close friends with the people who Theodor Herzl, and they know these guys in Switzerland, and the whole time these Palestinians, they're people, indigenous people living under the empire, and then the British Empire comes and takes them, and eventually they see themselves being sold out. And I read them, I listen to them speak. No, they have people that run their governments, but history tells us that you will put people inside of a vice, and the governments will get, or the opposition will get, harder and harder and harder. Whether it's how the IRA ends up in Ireland, or how Ho Chi Minh gets turned into Ho Chi Minh, or how Jumbo Kenyatta turns into Jumbo Kenyatta, and I'm not defending Hamas by any sense of, and certainly not defending the PLO. But what do you do with just these poor folks? And
let me ask you a question, sir.
Sure.
When the state was established in '48, did the country look then like it looks now?
No, of course not.
You know who built it up?
The Israelis did.
Why didn't the Palestinians build up also? Why didn't they?
Well,
why did they not build up from their tent cities and start building and creating a society?
What they say is if you put an American dollar on the sand, it should probably do something other. They're poor people. Nobody likes the Palestinians. Palestinians
They
not.
got millions of dollars. They've been given millions of dollars. What did they do with the money?
Well, the Palestinians.
They're poor people.
No, they were agrarian, small business people. I'm saying they were living under the Ottoman Empire. They lived together, and they didn't seem to have problems. You're making this as though I'm defending Hamas or defending PLO, and I'm not. I'm asking you.
I didn't say you defended them, but the Palestinian people had opportunities and they squandered them.
Well,
they took the money and they didn't use the money.
Well, that's what the British would say about the Irish, and that's what the French said about the Vietnamese, and that's what the British.
I don't know about the other places.
Well,
I know
do.
what happened in Israel.
Well, I do.
But what's the difference? But you're bringing in extraneous situations.
No.
They were given a lot of money and they didn't use it.
No, they stole
They're not
it.
poor people.
But they stole the money.
Well, let them go to their PLO and Hamas and tell them we want the money. I don't feel sorry for them.
Final question. Do you see the Palestinian people, and I love this call, by the way, you're very bright. Do you think that the Palestinian people have any legitimate positions in the world today to say we have issues not only with ourselves, there was a great line that in history that says the Palestinian people never miss a chance to miss a chance.
That's right.
And
very good.
Yeah, no, but at the same time, do you think they have something legitimate to say?
They have legitimate things to say as long as they are willing to realize there are other things which are also legitimate, not just them. Legitimacy, as you're proposing it, is not one-sided. It's got to include other people also. And when they learn that lesson and they imbibe it and they instill it in their society, then I can talk about the legitimate complaint. They didn't do that yet.
And a lot of it, they had nothing to do with what happened to them as a
it's
people.
Not true.
Oh,
that is not true.
When the British did all this,
listen
David.
To me. October 7th was all due to them. And you know that.
And I agree with you about October 7th.
Okay, so who has legitimate complaints? They invited the war. You invite a war, so you have to suffer. It's your problem.
No, it's not. What's happened to how many thousands of these people are dead in Gaza right now, for heaven's sakes?
Well, if the people would have invaded the United States of America and have killed hundreds of thousands of American citizens, not just 3,000, which is bad enough, they would have killed a lot of American citizens. What would we have done?
Well, we would have
knocked the living daylight out of that nation.
Well, what George Bush did wasn't the truth, so if you want to go with that, we can go with that.
Sir, you're bringing in things which are not relevant.
No, you brought it up.
I'm asking you a question.
You brought it up.
I know, because it's relevant. If we would have been attacked by an outside force,
right,
we would have responded with tremendous strength.
We did.
And you know that. So that's what the Israelis did.
And we did, and we killed all the wrong people. Which is the same thing I'm not defending any of this. You're trying to.
You are defending.
No, I'm
you really
not.
Are defending. Yeah, you are.
You're only because you're saying it, and I'm saying I'm not.
Yeah,
We're
not talking to each other. Listen, thank you for your time. I have to go. Have a good day.
Let's do the news with Blake.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Sorry, I kept you.
No, that was.
Sorry,
this
I stuck
has
you.
been outstanding radio once again.
Well, thank you.
It's been incredible. 2 hours. I wish I wasn't working so I could listen to.
Bring them in and
all of it.
And people.
No, it was great.
You and I
awesome.
know, and the last caller was very bright. I enjoyed it. It was.
Yeah, he's a great caller.
It's the first time I think I've ever talked to him, but he's a smart man.
Yeah. Sounded like he had a good breakfast going on too. He was making something. He was getting me hungry.
But again, it's like this. What talk radio, I think, maybe used to be, or you want to hope that it could be again, that you don't. Let me legitimately ask you a question, and I know your politics are I listen and I love you. The people that what we started to show on Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice and the FBI coming out and saying that the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein never had a client list or wasn't murdered. And I said I didn't think you could hear that on a lot of talk radio, because there's going to be, and you know how talk radio is in America today. You know talk radio is.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true, I think, when
Definitely.
if this is the only place in town that a Palestinian can walk in and complain or pitch a bitch about what they think is going on, and you would think that I ran over somebody's dog and for having her in here. And I don't think that's, well, it is what it is. Anyhow, we started the show this morning, you and I, talking about the Justice Department and FBI concluding there's no evidence that sex offender and disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein had any not only client lists, but was in fact a suicide. Well, I spent most of my last night, let me just read you this piece from 2021, a long time ago. The address book filled with Jeffrey Epstein's contacts, and there again, the contact list not only include the names of his victims, but prominent figures he socialized with, and in some cases was accused of introducing to girls for sexual abuse. And are we supposed to now believe what? You know, the FBI, there's no client list. Well, there's evidence that there's a client list. So talk radio won't like that.
No, and I think it's important. Talk radio's majority of it is conservative. So I think that's what you're saying here. And I think there will be a broom that comes out and says, okay, we're going to have to kind of sweep this one under the couch again, and for this particular situation, and look at it as at the whole of how this could hurt conservatives, Republicans, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, the Democrats could use it against the Republicans.
No doubt. So you're going to, I agree. I think what you're saying, will they minimize it, and will they poo-poo it eventually? Talk radio, I think some will, some won't.
Well, from my search, this is old stuff. The New York judge on Wednesday unsealing the names of 170 associates of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, it's an insult to everyone's intelligence.
Yeah.
We've already heard it. We know there's a list. We know the history. We know everything. Maxwell, she's in jail. Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail. She should be free if there's not a list.
If there's not a list, and there is a list, of course.
She right. That's it.
It was used against her to jail her.
Absolutely, and we know. I don't know why I continue to forget her name, but the poor girl in Australia or New Zealand, who supposedly killed herself, and we know that's not true. She said she didn't want to kill herself over and over and over, and she told the truth, and she told everything about told the story about the royal family and all the powerful people.
Oh, it's Prince Andrew, of course.
Yeah, Prince Andrew. So. It's horrible.
So I don't know what this is going to do. I got a call. We had a texter that said if it wasn't for the great tragedy of the river in Texas, would this be a front page story?
Yeah.
I
don't know.
I don't know.
I don't see. They came out with it right when the flooding was happening. Was that by design?
Saying there was no client list. Or that he didn't murder, didn't commit suicide. I don't know, boy. Do the news. Right. What a great morning. Thank you.
Great show. Great show. News is presented by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Now is the time to stand with Israel. Call 800-301-1188. That's 800-301-1188, or go to 710knus.com and click on the big red Stand with Israel banner at the top of the page. Our top story: Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins announcing this morning that the DJT administration has launched a nationwide effort to take back U.S. farmland from Chinese Communist Party-linked owners.
Today, we are taking this purpose and our American farmland back. American agriculture is not just about feeding our families, but about protecting our nation and standing up to foreign adversaries who are buying our farmland, stealing our research, and creating dangerous vulnerabilities in the very systems that sustain us. Reshoring and nearshoring our food and agriculture supply chain is essential for our nation's security.
Crews still conducting search and recovery missions in Texas after flash flooding left more than 100 people dead over the weekend. The summer camp was hit hard with 27 girls and counselors lost. A Colorado team is headed to Texas to help with the recovery efforts. Colorado Task Force 1 leader Steve Aseltine says they're planning on being there 2 or 3 weeks.
The first thing we do is we check in with the local authority and find out what's been done so far, and then we try to seamlessly, kind of work into their operation. We did respond to the Colorado floods a number of years back and worked in Lyons. That experience is used in day-to-day operations with what these firefighters and the engineers and the doctors all do every day.
A man's body was pulled Monday from Chatfield Reservoir. Parks and Wildlife spokesperson Kara Van Hus says he was paddleboarding with his 2 children when strong winds knocked them into the water.
And then there are currents. And even if you're a strong swimmer, swimming is tiring in a reservoir, and it can be tough to save yourself. Any time of year, really, that you're recreating in water is a dangerous time in Colorado, because in early summer and late spring, you have water temperatures that are cooler. So when you go into the water, it can be kind of a shock to your system. And then later throughout the year, it's just hot.
So be careful out there today. Once again, the children were rescued and were wearing life jackets. The father was not wearing a life vest. It happened Monday afternoon near the swim beach. Sean Combs' sentencing date will be the focus of a virtual hearing today. Diddy, or Combs, who remains behind bars in New York, is scheduled to learn his punishment on October 3rd, but his defense lawyers and prosecutors have expressed interest in moving up that date. Denver police say a child is in stable condition after falling 6 floors. It happened Monday in the Tamarack Family Shelter, which is operated by the Salvation Army. They say safety features were tampered with on the sliding glass door, allowing it to be opened. Police are investigating. The Rockies lose to the Red Sox 9-3 the final. It's 69 in Parker, 70 in Broomfield, 73 in Denver, 51 years in radio. Peter Boyles in for Jeff and Billy this week, and Pete continues. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Going to be a hot one along the Front Range today. Temperatures will be getting into the low to mid-90s with a few widely scattered showers and thunderstorms late afternoon and evening. Highs, mid-90s, lows tonight, low to mid-60s. Hot and sunny Wednesday, middle to upper 90s. 60s for lows, an isolated thunderstorm. Lower 90s Thursday, afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Cooler with scattered showers and thunderstorms Friday and Saturday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Morning again, everyone, on a Tuesday, the 8th morning of July, 2025. We have one line open, 303-696-1971. We began the show this morning talking about the review that was ordered by the president about Justice Department and the FBI, claiming they found no evidence that the notoriously now gone child molester, financier Jeffrey Epstein had a client list of associates whom he blackmailed or conspired to victimize dozens of women. This new memo that is dropped. And also the department also released hours of, they say, footage of part of the review of watching the videotapes. And before, of course, there were no tapes, and they blamed the jailers. The memo is likely to outrage a lot of people. And we talked about that, and a lot of people said, oh, no, it's unproven. But then last night, I spent a long time reading about the Epstein books. I go back to a piece here, December the 10th, 2021, and all of these books and these lists did exist. And now what? And so we were talking about Bongino and talking about Cash and all these guys that had to sit there, Pam Bondi, and say none of this existed. And then in studio, we had a doctor, Reema Wadan, who's a Palestinian, and that really blew the roof off the show. So here we go. We go to Jim in Littleton. You're on a radio show. Thank you for calling.
Good morning, Peter. It's great to hear you during the week.
Well, thanks, man.
I just want to say I didn't have a chance to listen. I've heard her on your Saturday shows. She's been on, a couple times?
Yeah, she has been.
Yeah. I thought she's very informative. Well, the thing about it is, I'll just say that, each side, the Israelis as well as the Palestinians, at one point are going to have to say they're just tired of the current situation, and they're going to have to sit down. Here's the point, though. For those that don't know, the history of Hamas, actually Hamas had its start from the Israelis actually funded it, if you look at the history of Hamas. So just like when we funded bin Laden to fight the Soviets, that's what the Israelis did to create Hamas. Look at the history of it.
Also backs it
and
up.
They did that. Well, remember, if you know the history of it, they did that to them because the PLO was on the West Bank, and they wanted to weaken the PLO, and Hamas was designed to do that. The Israelis, pure and simple, created Hamas to do that because they were more fearful of the PLO than they were of Hamas. And that was why and look what happened as a result of it. It's been their biggest problem. But if you want to know who's responsible for Hamas, it's the Israelis.
Remember, the Hezbollah comes out of the prisons in Lebanon, rivaling, say, that's the model of the Black Panther Party coming out of prisons in America. And Hezbollah comes out because the Jordanians finally had enough of the Palestinians. And so Arafat invades Lebanon. And then the Israelis invade Lebanon going after them, and then the Syrians come into that war. And that's the horribleness of what was the Lebanese Civil War that really was never settled. So out of that war comes Hezbollah. They come out of the jail cells of Lebanon. History is a wonderful, grand study. And when you understand how, or attempt to understand how these people arrive, Ho Chi Minh didn't arrive Ho Chi Minh. It took the terribleness of the French. He fights the Japanese. The French collaborate with the Japanese. When the Japanese invade French Indochina, they were called the Viet Minh. They fought, and then when the war was over, the West gave the French back Indochina, which they had no business having back. The IRA gets created because things get worse in our own country. We create these people who are willing to throw the British out. Jumbo Kenyatta and Kenya, they push them so far that now they become the Mau Mau. And I mean, you don't make explanations. You only can read what happens. And now these people are there. And your point's well taken. How do you settle this? And the answer is maybe you don't. Maybe it simply goes on.
I mean, Peter, if you look at it, the Hamas, they voted in. They did have a democratic election, and Hamas got voted in. I'm not familiar with that, but these people, they talk about them. The Palestinians right now, when they talk about, they're similar to what happened with apartheid. It is kind of true from that point of view. They have no rights, and if you're treated as a second-class citizen, eventually, at one point, you're going to say, "I'm not going to put up with this."
Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela.
So you got to feel for these people, and Israel has to make a decision.
Well,
either absorb them, make them Israeli.
But they would. Then it would not be a Jewish state. If you read, if you read the Israelis, I mean, look. If you read the life of Nelson Mandela, who eventually gets called a communist,
right.
How the white ruling class ruled what in fact is indigenous Africa. The same thing is true in Kenya, the Congo under Leopold, and people. What happened after the Second World War was all of these troops who were used by the British Empire, and the same thing was true with African Americans in this country. They went off to make the world safe. And when they come back and they get treated as they're treated, and they go, wait a minute, something's wrong here, And the world is in a shift, and Ireland is a great study of how did they go from what they went to and what they had to turn out to, and then how they turned into Michael Collins, and it was just a series of British events that the British, and again the Tans, when they finally get down to the Tans. And then that brings out the ire of the Irish. And then the Tans get sent to Palestine.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because they were so vicious.
They were horrible. What they did to the Irish, they were horrible.
Right.
So I don't have an answer.
I would say in this situation at some point, well, obviously they have to figure this out themselves. But for those that I've been there before, and those people are not treated. They are definitely not treated the same. And when you're treated as a second-class citizen, at some point you're going to revolt. And Israel, it is an apartheid state right now, and Israel has to come to terms on how to deal with it because you can't beat a birth rate, as you've said.
Many times, and that was the. There was a really great history book that I read thousands of years ago. It was entitled "When Men Revolt and Why," and they studied revolutions, and men revolted on their knees, not on their backs.
Right.
When they got to their knees is when they wanted to stand up, i.e., African Americans after the Second World War, or any place in the world that the colonial British were going to get run out of. And that was, the British eventually just walked away from the Middle East. They literally, and when you bring in bring in Lawrence of Arabia and read Lawrence, and Lawrence makes the case way before all of this started. They screwed the Arabs. The British colonials and the French colonials, they tell the Arabs one thing, and when they do it, then the screw job comes. And they have these memories that they're like elephants. They remember everything and anything and everything and every slight and everything that happens, and we're supposed to not know that.
Well, you're exactly right, and they do have a lot. And unfortunately, we've been wanting to change the governments within the Middle East, thinking that we can bring democracy to them.
No, you can't.
And that's crazy. Just like people have to decide what they want as a government. I just feel that at a certain point, and let's be honest, Israel will not exist if
no, and I agree.
America doesn't back them materially.
Yeah, but the state deserves to be there. But it's and that's the hard part when you realize that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that has gone on. Well, I mean, and as part of the conflict has its origins, the rise of the Zionists, Theodor Herzl, the 19th century in Europe. But look what's happening to Jews in Europe. And I mean, and you can understand where Zionism comes from.
Absolutely.
It's really complex.
Absolutely. They were figuring that, the fact of the matter is Jews have succeeded in America. They're flourishing in America. So, I mean,
yeah, sure.
I was reading the history of actually when you look at the Zionism, or when you look at how the success of Jews it was enabled by the creation of the state. When you look at it,
oh yeah,
they flourished that way. And look, the fact of the matter is, I have more problems, especially with your station, with the Christian Zionists than I have with Israelis. The Christian Zionists are they're insane.
Well,
they're insane people.
Take it to them, and believe me, there are things
because they believe God has given Israel the whole Middle East.
But the argument is called God's a real estate agent.
Yeah,
all right, we're breaking. All right, we're coming back. This is 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk station. Here we go. We're coming up on time. It is 9:46. Morning flew by. Hang on for tomorrow. We'll do it. We got one more coming in. 9:46, 14 before the hour. It's going to be a really hot day. I'm Peter Boyles in for the fellows. I'll be here actually until Saturday. Oh, I can think of no better way to end than Joe from Arvada. My man. Good morning, Joe.
Hi.
Thanks.
Good morning, Peter.
Thank you.
Well, I'm a proud Christian Zionist, and sounds like your advertisers are too.
Okay.
I would think that anybody who lives in America can see how, yes, eventually apartheid will work. We don't have Indians killing people because they declare that they own the land.
But let me stop you. Let me stop you, please. I enjoy. When the Europeans came and the natives were here, we overpowered them because of technology,
Yes.
because of all of those things. When you lead with Indians aren't killing us anymore, well, didn't we invade?
We won.
Well, of course we won. That's Napoleon's position. Might makes right.
I'm also a Persian. My father came from Iran. Now, I am an American. I was born at Rose Hospital.
You don't let me finish my point.
I get your point.
No, you don't, because you try to get past it. Might makes right.
That's right.
And so, but does it? In other words, when the Germans did what they did, it's because they had more might. Does that make...
Not then all of us together against them.
No, does that make right?
Yes. And here's one thing you don't understand. God is a Zionist. That's right, Peter. God is a Zionist.
Joe, God's a real estate agent?
No, God brought his son through the Jews, and he also made a covenant with the Jews thousands of years before.
But the point of the state of Israel was created in 48. So
God's covenant doesn't end.
Was God a real estate agent in the United States of America?
I would say this, that the founders believing in God Almighty definitely played a part in our founding, yes.
There were deists, there were others, but I'm asking you if
They weren't all deists. Give me a break.
Some of them, do you ever read Thomas Jefferson's Bible?
Yeah, I think there was some deism in Thomas Jefferson's writings.
And others.
Does that mean that he was an absolute deist?
No. Yes, it does.
He talks about God.
Hey, well, that's a deist.
Well, he also talks about Jesus Christ.
In his Bible, he removes all the mentions of Jesus Christ. Look, I don't want to
I think that it's not a wonder that you have a lot of sympathy for Thomas Jefferson. I think he was brilliant.
Jeez, Joe, I can't get around it. What I'm saying to you was then God a real estate agent when it came to the United States of America?
Well, God was a real estate agent in Israel. He told the Israelites to go and smite everything that existed inside of it, all the peoples that were there. And he now is, I believe, has brought the Jews back. And let's face it, the Jews have outpowered all of the Palestinians. They need to make peace because they can't win. They will be, removed from the planet. Hamas as a whole is done.
Well, one thing that you do and you can count on historically, that nothing ever goes to ground that doesn't come back. There will be and always will be, especially when you have the underclass position, that they will fight back. It just goes history's great lesson, including. No,
you haven't understood the great lesson of God Almighty, that Jesus Christ is coming back.
Well, that's an opinion. That's not a lesson. But
no, it isn't a lesson. But you haven't learned it. But you will.
Okay.
Every knee will bow.
Okay.
That's right.
It's good to have you back. They were booking fights with you and Billy. Did you know that?
Yeah, I heard about that, and I would gladly accept for charity's sake. I am a superior physical specimen with regard to you and Billy, but I will say this: I would rather have a fair fight with regard to debate. Instead of the hold button or the push button or the hang up button, I'd like to have a moderator.
Joe,
but you guys aren't willing.
Well, no, Joe, do you know how
referee?
You know how? Oh, of course I can. Do you know how nuts you get? Seriously.
Yeah, everyone that listens to you that is a Zionist thinks you're nuts.
Well, listen. This woman came in the studio. This is the first day I've ever done a weekly show in forever. She had an hour and a half.
I listened.
Like I'm saying to you, she had an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Was that too much? Not enough, or she shouldn't have been here at all?
Well, there was no pushback. Like, for instance, South Africa. Look at South Africa. They are killing white people in droves. What do you not understand?
No, what I mentioned Nelson Mandela, it's always, revolutions are really bloody things, but they suppressed the black Africans for so long. I'm not making...
Yeah, but you forget that apartheid ended long ago, and that there are generations of white people that grew up in South Africa.
Well, and again, they claim they say, like the Protestants in Ireland were South Africans. It's more difficult. It's more difficult.
It would be like saying that the Indians should be taking over now because they are the original owners of America.
There's quite a
bit. Give me a break.
Okay, we knocked them out of the box. Joe, I love your voice. All right, everybody. It is like that final text here. God is a real estate agent. He created the earth. We'll go out on that. I'll tick to David the caller. Thank you, man. That was a good call. To Reema Wadan, thanks for coming into studio and taking the heat. And I guess we're going to try it again tomorrow, Adam. I'm Peter Boyles in for the fellas. Take care of yourselves.